Before we jump into today's show, I just wanted to let you know that I have got a brand new 3-part audio series available to download right now. If you head over to donnaeade.com/3-part audio, that's all one word, no spaces, you can download your How to Build Your Authority with Podcasting audio series. This is going to address guesting and hosting. So if you're interested in either of those and you want to know how to build your authority, head over to donnaeade.com/3-part audio. The link will be in the show notes. You're listening to the Mindset and Action Podcast, the place to be to grow and streamline your business. I'm your host, Donna Eade. Let's jump into the show. Focus is the art of knowing what to ignore. James Clear. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am so glad to have you here with me today. And this week we are focusing on focus. So if you listened to the Mini Mindset Monday with Viv, you will have heard us talk about focus on that. And today I'm going to be jumping into some practical tips, thoughts and whatnot around focusing in our business. So I will be referring to an episode that I did a while ago now, over 100 episodes ago. Wow. Even more so, amazing, 154. So I will link it in the show notes if you want to go and listen to that episode and get the full gist breakdown of what happened in there. We were talking about context switching, which is a big part of focus, I believe. So if you want to listen to that one, I will link it in the show notes below for you so you can go ahead and listen to that one in more detail. Today, we are going to be focusing though on focus and how we can get more focused. And it's really important for us to be able to focus, especially in this fast-paced world that we're currently living in. It really allows us to be more effective with our time and energy, and it will lead to better results. So there is a concept idea of something called deep work. Amy Porterfield calls it her tiger time. This is time where you really focus in on one thing only, and you really go in on it for a good chunk of time. And by doing that, by eliminating all of the distractions, you get much more done and you have a lot more clarity in what you're doing as well. I think you produce better work when you can really just focus on that one piece of work. I know this to be true because I've done it myself, where I've just set myself a task of this is the thing that I'm going to do for the next hour, and I do it. I get so much more done and I am more productive when I do it that way. So we're going to dive into all of that. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, episode 154, that is where I talk about context switching. And I'm going to just touch on that a little bit now because I think it is a big proponent to why we struggle to stay focused. And one of the reasons that I think focus is so important is because it really helps to slow us down. You know, we're going at 100 miles an hour. So before we jump into the context switching, see, I'm jumping about all over the place now. It's a perfect example of the rat race. But I want to kind of give you a visual analogy to think about whilst we're talking about this. So imagine there was a road that went from Birmingham down to Dover, and you were going to catch a ferry to go on holiday. So a road going from Birmingham down to Dover that nobody else knows about. It's a secret road that only you have the password to. You know where the entrance is, you get on there, and it is a clear, relatively straight road that just goes all the way down to Dover. So you get out of your house, you put your bag in your car, you get in the car and you start driving down this road. It is not going to take you that long, and it is not going to be stressful. It's not going to upset you in any way. There's not going to be anybody else around. Nobody else is involved. You know, you've not got to check road signs or go round roundabouts or anything like that. There is nothing. It is just one straight road all the way down to Dover. Now look at the reality of getting from Birmingham to Dover. And say you're not going to drive because, driving means that you can't do anything. You're going to have to focus on the road. You're going to be involved in all of that jazz. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to get in your car again, bag in the car, and you're going to go drive to the train station. Then you're going to get on a train, and then you're going to get into London. I don't know if there is a direct train from Birmingham to London. I feel like there should be, but we'll go with it. There is. You get into London. Oh my goodness, you've got to get on the underground. You've got to get to another train station. You've got to get on another train, and then you've got to get down to Dover. So all of that is context switching, and all of that is loads of people that are going to get in your way when you're going through the underground. There's going to be pushing and shoving, and you're going to go from this post to that post, and you've got to hop on this train and hop off that train and get on here and get off there. There could have been roadworks that were in your way when you were going from your house to the train station. It's a lot, and I just feel stressed just thinking about it, okay? But then you go back to the road where you're the only one on it. And you just have that straight road all the way, no roundabouts, no traffic lights, no other cars, no road signs, just one straight road, direct route to Dover. And breathe. That is what it is like when you focus, because we spend most of our working lives jumping from one thing to another. We are hopping on and off those trains all day, answering phone calls, answering emails, doing our work, talking to clients, etc., etc. It is a lot of jumping around. So what if we could just pare it back and we could block our time out and have, for this hour, I am going to go down this road. And this is the only road I'm going to go on. It just helps us to slow down and breathe, but it also allows us to be more productive. So I've got in my head that somebody once said, if you want to, something along the lines of, if you want to do more, slow down. If you want to get more done, slow down. Because that art of slowing down in some ways, not jumping from thing to thing, just focusing on one thing at a time, can really allow you to get more productive and be more productive. So where we're talking about context switching, that is, when your brain is switching from one task to another. So it could be anything. It could be, for example, here I am recording this podcast right now. If my phone flashed at the side of me, I would look at my phone, I would potentially read the notification I could see on that. That is a context switch right there. That is taking me out of my zone of genius right now, which is recording this podcast episode. And it would distract me to the point where I might fumble over the words, because maybe I'm reading it out the corner of my eye whilst I'm speaking into the microphone, and then I fumble over my words, and now I've lost my point and I've got to refocus myself. So that is the art of context switching, and that is what we want to try and eliminate as much as possible when we are working, especially. And one of the things that I said in episode 154 was that the art of context switching, it shouldn't be called an art, it should be like a negative connotation to it, I think. Context switching is something that can take about 2 seconds. 2 seconds to context switch is what they say, but that adds up to 40 minutes a day. So that's something that, 40 minutes is a good chunk of time, that could be, spending time with your kids doing their homework, or it could be, sitting in the bath for 40 minutes rather than having a shower because you've got the time to have the bath. If baths are your thing, they're not my thing. But, these are the things that you could do, just an extra 40 minutes a day if we eliminate context switching. Now, the context switching that we do often is things that we've got to do. We've got to change task at some point. So we can't just do one thing all day and not have any distractions. But there is ways of protecting your boundaries and bringing it into more focus. So it can take, and this is something that I didn't talk about in episode 154. I said I would talk about it another time. Here is that other time, is once you have switched and you've taken that 2 seconds to switch, switching back can actually take much longer. And I kind of alluded to this in that episode, but I didn't actually go into the details. So here's the scenario. You're working on a blog post or an article or a client proposal or, some piece of written work that is going to take you a few hours to get through potentially. And you are 20 minutes in, you're in your flow and your phone rings and it's a client. So you've got to answer it. And you pick up that phone and you're on the phone to that client for 10, 15 minutes. When you come back to what you were doing, you are not able to just instantly start writing again because your brain has completely come out of that mode and it is in client mode and it is in whatever that client was having a problem with. Maybe you couldn't solve it on the call. Maybe they've given you something that you need to think about or you need to action. So you've got to write something down. You're thinking about that. So all of that is going on in your head and then you're coming back to something that's completely different. And now you have to remember where you were, what you were thinking. I've done this before. I've been like mid-sentence, something's distracted me. I've come back. You have to go back and read like the last paragraph that you wrote so you can kind of try and get back into the flow of what you were saying. And then you read the next sentence, you're halfway through it and you're like, I have no idea how I was going to end that sentence. And you end up deleting it and then rereading the paragraph to know how you're going to pick up and start again. So all of that can take about 25 minutes to refocus on that deep work. So if you add the 2 seconds of context switching a day adds up to 40 minutes, then add the 25 minutes where it's coming back. It's not necessarily going to be that longer time if you were, for instance, batching your social media captions or something like that. But if you were in deep work, something that was like a project, then you've got to add in the 25 minutes that it's potentially taking you to refocus and get back into that work. So it's a lot of time that we waste when we context switch. So the less we do it, the more productivity, the more focused we can be. The other thing with the context switching is kind of going back to that scenario I gave you with the trip from Birmingham to Dover, is that actually if you went down in the car on that magical road, wouldn't we all, isn't there a journey that you do where you wish you could just have that magical road? Mine would be to Cornwall. From here to Cornwall, if I could have a magical road that only I knew about, that would be amazing. I wonder how long it would take me to get there. See? Distracted, context switching. The fact is that when we context switch, it leads to more fatigue, reduced focus, decreased overall productivity. And that is because of the stress and the adrenaline that builds up when you are jumping from one thing to another. If you sort of liken it to somebody who is hyperactive all the time versus somebody who's sitting in a meditative state. The person who is, jumping from here to there and running around and doing everything, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to watch. But if you watch somebody who is just sat in a very calm state, it almost instantly makes you breathe slower and slow down. And that is what it can do when you really focus in on what you're doing rather than letting context switching take over. So what else can we do to help us focus? We can minimize distractions. So this isn't necessarily the context switching, but this is more about the environment that you are in and what you are having around you. So look at your office space. Is it conducive to work or does it look like a bomb site of a teenage child's bedroom? Mine is somewhere in the middle right now, I have to say, but that's because I'm set up for a podcast and that always looks a bit messy because of all the cushioning that I bring in. But my desk has got a bit messy again. There are screwed up pieces of paper. I can see an empty packet of Post-it notes that I unwrapped the other day. There's an envelope that I opened a letter last week and I haven't done anything with that envelope. There is definitely stuff that could be tidied up. And what that does is it is a distraction. So again, imagine you are going into a room that is full of things like going into a granny's house full of clutter versus going into a young couple's house that haven't got any kids and live in one of those ultra modern homes with a minimalist aesthetic. it is again just that opportunity to breathe. It gives you that space and it makes the mind peaceful. Now, some people like all their knickknacks and their trinkets, and I'm not saying that you have to get rid of those things if they bring you joy, but it is the clutter, the amount of things that you have around you can really impact your ability to focus in on what it is that you're doing. So if we can clear the room and keep it clean and tidy, that is going to help us focus more. Again, we can go through all of the senses with this as well. Are you somebody who works better in silence? I am. I do not like to have noise. If it is music only with no singing, then I can have that in the background, but I choose not to because I just prefer silence. That is just my mode of operation. I just prefer silence. So how do you feel about noise in your workspace? Some people actually prefer to have music on because it takes away the silent noise. So cars going by, maybe some roadworks in the background that you can hear, maybe a dog barking, those things. So they would actually rather control the noise in their room by having music either in their earphones or playing it in the room. And that just helps them actually remain focused because they're not getting distracted every time a car goes past or pulls up. So you need to think about what it is that works for you. Then think about the smell in the room. Smells have a huge impact on us. And as somebody who has been a Sensi consultant for over 5 years, it is something that I'm sort of hyper aware of. And I like to have my warmers on. I like to have certain scents in different rooms when different things are happening. And they really do pull me back to certain periods of time. So maybe you want to make a signature focus scent. So maybe it's a candle that you love, maybe it's a wax melt that you love, maybe it's a spray that you can spray in the room, maybe it's an essential oil that you like that you put into an oil burner. Just create a scent that to you is like, this is the scent that I use only when I am in deep work, in that focus position, and you'll become accustomed to that. So if you are focusing whilst you're smelling that scent, then that smell is going to become synonymous with focus. It's a really cool way of tying in that focus and giving you something else to hone that focus. And then even more so than your room is your computer screen that you're looking at. Is it cluttered? Have you got loads of icons on your desktop? Do you have hundreds of tabs open all at once? I am going to say right now I can see one tab, which is the document that I am reading my notes from for this podcast episode, and Audacity. So I have two screens. One's got Audacity open on it that I'm recording with, and one's got my document on it. And that is all I can see, bar the taskbar at the bottom, which I could probably do with tidying up, to be honest with you. There is a lot on there. But if I was to close these two windows, what I would see is a blooming mess, because I am somebody who will open hundreds and hundreds of tabs and have them all open. And that is a visual distraction, whether it is literally pulling your mind. Maybe a notification comes through on one of those tabs and something pings up on that tab and it distracts you. If you've got noise coming from one, then there's usually a speaker showing you which tab is speaking. So, all of these things can be distractions. So when you are in your focus work, try and make sure that all of those distractions are closed down and you only see what you need to see to get the job done. And that is really going to help you to focus more. One of the other things that can help you with your focus is something that I absolutely love to talk about, which is batching. Batching is a really great way of staying focused on one task and avoiding that context switch. So today I'm actually recording a couple of episodes of the podcast, and that means that after this recording is done, I am just going to open up a new document that is going to give me the notes for the next episode, and I will record that episode. It means that I don't have to leave my computer station. I don't have to open up any other app. I'm just going to go into where this current document is and swap it out for the other one. It's not going to be a lot of context switching. So I will get that done, and I will get it done in less time than it would take if I just inserted it into my day somewhere. So for example, if I was running through my emails and then I had a client call and then I thought, I'll do a podcast episode now. What I would need to do is go and get these cushions, bring them in, lay my blanket down, get my microphone in the right place, open up Audacity, make sure the microphone's on, do that, then get rid of all that stuff, because maybe then I've got a client call and the client doesn't need to see all my cushions and everything, so I need to move that out of the way. Then I have my client call and then I think, I'll do another podcast episode. I've got to bring everything all back out. I've got to open Audacity again. All of that is time that didn't need to happen because I could have just done it all in one go. So think about that when you're setting up for things. And obviously, the podcast is a little bit more extreme because there is physical setup that needs to happen, but that happens even when you're working on your computer and you're going from working on your emails to working on a blog post, and then you go into a client call, and then you go back into your emails, and then you go on social media, then you go back to do another blog post. You were already set up for blog posts at one point, and you could have just carried on in that zone, in that frame of mind, and got it done, but you've context switched, so that's actually taken more time to get you ready for that second blog post, which you could have just followed on from the first one, and it would have been smoother, you would have got it done quicker, and it would have been more productive. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. The other thing to consider when you're talking about batching is calendar blocking, which again I have spoken about, and it's something that I moved away from a while back, but I think if I'm looking at it objectively, it was because I was getting burnt out. And I have been through, a time where it has just been really hard for me to get the motivation to do what I need to do in my business. And I think we all go through those periods, and it is kind of that make or break time of, am I going to carry on? Am I going to not? We all have ups and downs in our business, and that has been a period of time. So I think when I started to drop the calendar blocking is when that was actually a sign that I was not in a great place. And going back to it, I do find that actually if I block my calendar, I do get more done. And if I abide by what the calendar says, it is more productive for me and it helps me focus. So for example, right now I have it that on Thursday afternoons, I edit my podcast episodes. That is the time where I am editing. So I don't do anything else. I don't plan any calls in for that time. It is purely for editing my podcast. Not Thursdays, sorry, Wednesdays. Wednesdays is for editing. So that is what I do with that time, and I don't do anything else. And that allows me to then batch edit because I've got the whole afternoon. So I just batch edit the podcast episodes that I have, and that gets me a lot further along. So that is a really useful tool, group together like for like items that you do. So for example, if you do blog posts, but you also do LinkedIn articles, they're very similar in setup, and I'm sure you don't just write them directly in LinkedIn or directly on your blog app. You will write them in a Word document or a Google document and transfer them over. So you can sit in Google or Word and you can write out these blog posts and articles, and then you can filter them into the place that they need to be. By focusing in on the writing aspect in the first instance, you are going to be more productive, get it done quicker, and be more thorough with it, because you're not context switching like, oh, I'm going to do this blog post, then I need to put it up on my website, and then I need to add all these links in, and I need to go and get this from here and that from there to add in. I've got to do a graphic for it on Canva, blah, 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 all of that. And then, now I need to go over to LinkedIn, which is a different platform, works a slightly different way, and I've got to put this article up there and do all of that. You're going to sit and just do the writing first. and then you can go to your website and do the blogs first, and then you can go to LinkedIn and then you can do the articles there. And by doing it in that way, rather than doing write a blog, put it up, do the graphics, come back, write another one and do all that, that takes more time. So it's a really good way of reducing the amount of time that is wasted. And you think about it, it's tiny little bits of time, but going back to episode 154, those tiny bits of time add up. It's like, I think 1,200 context switches that we do a day as humans at 2 seconds a time, 40 minutes a day, 4 hours a week, and like 5.5 weeks of the year that we spend doing this. So the more that we reduce this, the more time we get back. And yes, it doesn't add up to, oh, I can take 5 days holiday now, but it could add up to you actually finish work on time and you can turn your machine off at 5 p.m. and go and be with your family. It means that you don't have to work on the weekends, because you will have done everything in the time that you have because you're focused on it. So that is where you will see the improvements. And I think that's a really important thing to consider as well when we're talking about this focus is, what do you want your days to look like? How do you want to spend your time? And what can you do to make that happen? So if we're sitting there going, I really want to take Fridays off to be with your family because maybe your husband doesn't work or your wife doesn't work on Fridays and you want to be able to spend that time with them, or maybe it's because your kids have activities on certain days and you want to be able to take them to those activities, and that means like leaving work earlier, so you want to be able to have that flexibility. Look at how you want to spend your time, what that looks like in your life, not just your business, as overall, where do you want to spend your time and how much time do you then have to work? Because the beauty of running your own business is you do not have to work 9 to 5. There is this thing like where people are saying, oh, you shouldn't be working in the evenings, you should be spending the time with your family. But if your kids are young enough that they're in bed by 6 or 7, then actually you might want to use that time to run your business, depending on your personal relationships. Because, I know for me, if I was to do that here, I don't have the young child that goes to bed at that time. But if I decided, actually, I want to be able to go out mid-morning and have a coffee with a friend every day, and so therefore I'm going to do 2 hours of work after dinner every night, my other half would probably be a little bit upset with me. So you've got to look at what it looks like for you and how it works with your family to enable you to do the things that you want to do. And then in those pockets of time where you are working, you want to make sure that those are 100% getting as much focused time and dedication that you can give them. So by eliminating all these distractions, by calendar blocking, by batching, you are going to save all of that time so that those times are really productive and work for you and enable you to live the life that you want to live. So the final thing that I wanted to just jump into is a few of the techniques that you can use over and above calendar blocking and things like that to help you with your focused time. So one of them is the Pomodoro technique, which we have spoken about before. That's when you do short bursts with breaks. So it's more like you do kind of 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break, do another 15 minutes, take another 5-minute break, do another 15 minutes, take a 20-minute break, something like that. You would have to look it up. I'll try and link it in the show notes if I remember. But that is how that works. For me, that doesn't work because that's more of a distraction to me. I would rather sit down for an hour and focus on something than take those mini breaks, because it pulls my focus. I'm going to be scrolling my phone in those 5 minutes, and that's going to take me off on a complete tangent, and I might go over my 5 minutes. Then, it's just something that wouldn't work for me and the way my brain works. But if for you that works better, then you could definitely do that. I would advocate for having a small break every hour at least, because your body needs to move. It shouldn't be stagnant all the time. So getting up to go to the loo or make a cup of tea can really just help you to sort of re-energize your body and bring you back to focus, because I think we do get sluggish if we spend too much time doing that. The next thing is to work that time blocking, that calendar blocking, and be flexible with it. So it's not about on Mondays, this is what I do on Tuesdays, this is what I do on Thursdays. It may be for you if that's the way you work, but you have that flexibility to move those time blocks around. So if something comes up, you just move the block. Don't try and do the thing in between the block and mess it up. Keep your blocks as blocks, move them around, and shift things as needed. So have that flexibility, because I think if you are too rigid with it, unless that works for you and the way your brain works, it can be something that kind of sucks the life out of you, because it's like, well, I don't get to do what I want to do because I have to do this at this time because it's in my calendar. There's no haves to in business. It should all be, I want to do this because it's going to help my business grow and it's going to help me help more people. Then the last thing I wanted to touch on where it comes to ways to boost your focus is automation. So automate as much as you possibly can. It can take a little bit more time to set up in the beginning than it would. For example, if there's an email that you always send out, it can be a lot quicker just to send the email than to set up the automation for it. But once you've set the automation up, you don't have to send that email again. So it is really advantageous to take advantage of automations as and where you can. So I do a lot of templates as well. This works well with templates. So I have a blog post. It looks the same every week, and I just copy the previous week and take out the words and swap out the picture. So the layout looks exactly the same. I am just swapping in things rather than starting from a blank page where I'm going to have to actually go back to my other one and go, how does that look? Where did I put this? And check all the time. So I just copy and reuse the same template. I do a lot of that with emails as well. So for my guests that come on my podcast, I have a series of 7 emails that they will get over the period of time of us working together. That is all done in my email system as files, and when I need to send them out, I just get them out and send them. And so all it takes is for me to put their email address in the email box, scan the email, make sure it has everything that I need it to say, because I do add things in here and there, and obviously when I'm sending out the links, I need to put the links in for their show, and then I hit send. And that is so much quicker than writing a whole email going, hey, thank you for coming on the podcast, it was really great speaking to you, here is the links for your episode, please share and blah blah blah, whatever it is. I don't have to type all that out again and again and again. So what emails do you write the same email again and again and again that you can do as a template, so you can just copy and paste it or send it from that template? So look at those kind of automations. Look at automating your sales funnel, your freebie funnel, all of those things, especially when we start out in business. Oftentimes those things aren't automated because we're not getting hundreds of people coming in the beginning wanting those things. So it's easy enough for us to do it on our own. But as soon as you have the ability to automate something, automate it, because it is just going to make your life so much easier and you don't have to think about it, and it avoids you missing things as well. If you have a freebie that people can download, or maybe a quiz that people can do, but you're actually evaluating it somehow on the back end yourself to send out, you're checking the answers and sending it out, that's something that can be automated, and then you don't have to think about it. That then stops you receiving this email, missing it, and then somebody not getting the information that they needed or asked for. And the likelihood is, if that's a freebie type thing, they're not going to reach out to you to tell you that you didn't send it to them or that they didn't receive it. They're just going to chalk it up to bad customer service and move on. Maybe they'll come back at another time and try again, or they'll forget that they did it and they'll try again, but you don't know. So you don't want to lose people from that, where a simple automation would help you. So that is really my overview of focus today. I know there was lots in there, so you might need to listen again And I would definitely recommend checking out episode 154, where I talked about context switching in its entirety. That was a really good episode. I would love it if you would take an action this week for me and just think about one of those things I've said and start implementing it into your business, whether it is putting your phone on silent for the hour so that you can get your work done, whether it is closing down the tabs or at least minimizing windows, whether it's tidying your office. I would love to hear what your biggest takeaway is, what you are actually going to look at implementing next week, and implement it for me and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear your stories. So that is it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do look at coming over and joining us in the Facebook group. It is Start a Podcast UK. I hang out over there a little bit. I'm actually going to be over there a little bit more because I am moving away from Instagram. Eek. So I'm going to be over in my group a little bit more. So if you want to connect with me, that is where you will find me. Again, it is Start a Podcast UK. There is a link for it in the show notes for you. You can go and listen to episode 154 from the link in the show notes as well. And I will see you next week, guys. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.